In my past life, I was deceived and manipulated by my adopted daughter. Even my own daughter had her life taken by her. In this life, I look at the timid little girl standing before me. A cold snare rises in my heart. Do you think you can toy with me and my daughter again? I really want a mother. Please, can you let me be your daughter? Her voice trembles. Her eyes are full of longing. I smile and nod. But in my heart, I'm already calculating how to make her pay. Very well, Han Fei. On the day of my daughter's engagement, he was dressed to the nines, his heart full of anticipation as he looked ahead. Her fiancé, Mujie, gazed at her with deep affection. He took a dazzling diamond ring out of the box. Will you marry me? My daughter's eyes sparkled like stars. She shyly extended her hand. Amid applause and blessings, Mujie carefully placed the ring on Han Fei's hand. In the awkward silence, Han Fei smugly glanced at my daughter, ignoring her shock and sorrow. He proudly flaunted the ring, as if he wanted the diamond's brilliance to blind my daughter. Oops, sorry. Mujie has always liked me, you know. He was afraid you'd be heartbroken, so he didn't tell you. But marriage is a lifelong commitment, and we've already sacrificed a lot for you. Why does Mujie love me and not you? Maybe you should reflect on yourself. We're true love. You'll give us your blessing, won't you? You who lost your daughter's fiancé, and yet shamelessly demand her blessing. Is this still the innocent and understanding adopted daughter whom I raised with so much care? The one I spent countless days and nights with, tirelessly nurturing? I was so furious, I nearly spat blood, let alone my daughter. But she, kind by nature, swallowed her bitterness and forced a smile as she offered a hollow blessing. I couldn't do it. From now on, let the bridges be bridges, and the roads be roads. I will no longer interfere with your lives. My daughter, weary beyond measure, tried to leave, but his friends blocked her way. Huang Li, why are you so petty? Aren't you Han Fei's sister? Today is his engagement, and you can't even offer him a proper blessing? Don't even dream that Mujie will ever love you. They're a perfect match. A union made in heaven. The one who isn't loved is the real third party. Isn't that right? Their shameless, twisted words revealed their stance without a doubt. I remembered that they were once my daughter's childhood friends, the ones she used to share everything with. Now they all suddenly stood on the opposite side, spouting self-righteous nonsense. Not only did they want to whitewash the wrongs of that scum couple, they aimed to break her spirit, trample on my daughter's dignity. In my rage, I smashed the engagement banquet and took my daughter home. But even that couldn't erase the wounds in her heart. It was then that I realized her alienation had not been without warning. From the moment Han Fei entered our home, with that pitiful expression saying, "How nice. Every day I can dress like a princess. Unlike me, with only 2 ragged dresses." My daughter had given her all of her skirts. Then came the snacks, toys, and stationery. But what I received in return wasn't his gratitude. It was an ever-growing appetite. Now, he has taken my daughter's friends and fiancé. Before I could even take him to see a psychologist, he had already fallen into deep depression. I was clearly the victim. So why did they tell me to die? The clothing store I poured my heart and soul into gone. Everything all gone. I had already given Mujie up. So why did they have to destroy my store too? On his phone screen was the shop he spent 10 years building, being smashed and trashed by others. The clothes he had designed and crafted with his own hands were being cut into pieces and thrown away. On the streets, they held up large signs, redlining my daughter's name, an emperor meddling in others' relationships, conspiring with her birth mother to humiliate the adopted daughter. The shop's clothing quality is atrocious. Shop owner Huang Li's character is filthy. A mistress has no right to run a store. Get out of a corp. Then he jumped off the building and committed suicide. On his phone, I found a message from Han Fei. "Do you want me to let you go? Then come to Shinmin Street. I'll be waiting at the signpost at 8:30. I still have confidential information about your mom's company. If you don't want your mom to lose everything, then jump from the building." And so, filled with overwhelming hatred, I fainted. When I woke again, before me was a familiar, innocent face, one I hated to my core. The orphanage director, Tong Wen, held little Han Fei's hand, her eyes full of pleading as she looked at me. "This child is very well behaved and obedient. Because he's so frail, no one has been willing to adopt him. Miss Shen, you're such a kind person. Please save him." The scene felt eerily familiar. It was the moment when I adopted Han Fei. His little dirt-covered hand tugged at my sleeve, looking at me timidly. "Mom, I really want a mother. Please, can you let me be your daughter? I've been bullied here by the older kids. I've been beaten and starved. And I've never had a full meal." He lifted his sleeve, revealing his scars to me. Then he looked up. But in the eyes of this seemingly innocent child, all I saw was a stormy darkness. Yet I smiled and nodded. "All right, welcome to come home with me and start over again. I will make sure she feels every ounce of pain my daughter had to endure." A sly smile flashed in Han Fei's eyes as she accompanied me to handle the paperwork. I hated myself for not seeing through her schemes sooner. I told the orphanage director many of the documents were kept by my husband, but after his passing, I haven't been able to find them. I can't process the adoption right now. Once I get everything replaced, I'll come back. How about that? Tong Wen happily nodded. "I'm already so grateful that you're willing to adopt him. There's no rush for the paperwork. I trust your character." And so I took Han Fei back home. Huang Li kindly held her hand. "So you're the sister mom, adopted for me? Welcome home." Han Fei sighed with satisfaction. Her eyes were fixed on the princess dress she wore. How nice it would be to dress like a princess every day, unlike me with only too ragged clothes. Seeing my daughter's sympathy about to surface again, I walked straight over. "Your sister made all her dresses herself. If you like, you can make your own too. You only have ragged clothes. Did Lily ruin them for you? Why are you playing the victim in front of her?" Huang Li caught on, blushing slightly as she smiled. "Yes, now that mom has adopted you, you'll also get pocket money. We'll have our own allowances, although it's not as much as our other friends. It's enough to buy a few things you like." Han Fei smiled awkwardly. His eyes filled with hope as he looked at me. "So, what about my pocket money?" I frowned. "What pocket money? Providing for your food, clothing, and shelter is already beyond my responsibility. What do you need money for? The director even said you were understanding. But you come here asking for money. Is this what they teach you at the orphanage, how to beg?" He paused, a flicker of coldness passing through his eyes. "But the law states that you must provide children with living expenses amounting to 30% of your income each month." I laughed coldly. "We haven't even processed the paperwork yet. Why should I give you living expenses? Besides, you're only 9 this year, and you seem to understand quite a bit. You even know what benefits come with adoption. No wonder your father doesn't care and your mother doesn't love you. You're just an orphan. No wonder no one wants you." He lowered his head, his eyes red, not uttering a single word. Huang Li looked at me in surprise. "Mom, what are you?" I spoke earnestly. Li. "He is an orphan. His past was very tragic, but his suffering wasn't caused by us. Do you understand bringing him home? Providing for his meals. That is already a kindness to him. He should be grateful to us. How can he still have the nerve to ask for money? Whether it's to him or anyone else. Don't let your sympathy overflow. Not everyone will appreciate it." Huang Li nodded, seeming to understand. "Mom, I get it." Meanwhile, Han Fei raised his head, his resentful eyes suddenly turning pitiful and wronged. "I've had a hard life too. I just wanted enough to eat, nothing more. I'm sorry, Mom. I won't ask you for money again. I mocked him slightly. After all, I'm your adoptive mother. I just want you to correct your flaws. I won't mistreat you when it comes to food and drink. His eyes lit up, nodding like a chick pecking at rice. Give a slap and then a sweet date. It's the most common and effective way to train a dog. It just so happened that I took Han Fei in during late August, after he envied his sister for attending a prestigious school. I arranged for him to attend the same elementary school as my daughter. A few days before school started, I brought over my sister's niece, Shen Nan, who was in the 3rd grade. In my past life, Shen Nan and Han Fei never got along well. She often told me Han Fei was a scheming green tea girl, that I was raising a tiger to inflict harm. But when I approached the emperor to understand the situation, my foolish daughter only knew how to make excuses for him. He grew up in an orphanage. He has emotional scars. It's normal for him to be a bit defensive. We should care for him and help him. Later, to ease Han Fei's inexplicable trauma, I kept them from interacting with Shen Nan. Now I realize that Shen Nan's judgment is far older than mine. My ex-brother-in-law was deceived by a green tea woman. My sister raised him all on her own. He was not like other naive children. Sure enough, half an hour after Shen Nan arrived home, she impatiently looked at Han Fei. Tell me, how tragic was your life in the orphanage? What? Han Fei was dumbfounded, stammering. I was just sharing my experiences. And Nan huffed. Who asked you to share? What's there to share? If you're going to share, say you've never seen a smartphone or tablet. Do you really want one? Are you going to ask my cousin for it? Can you even afford it? How can you be so shameless? Auntie adopting you is already a great mercy, and you're still not satisfied. What are you pretending for? I've met plenty of people like you. My dad is surrounded by women who act pitiful. Low-class girls trying to make money. You're so young. Where did you learn all this? Your words reek of green tea. Han I burst into tears. I know I'm poor ... but you can't insult me like this. After saying that, he didn't forget to look at me with those wrong eyes, as if waiting for me to support him. I stood up, placing my hands on my hips as I looked at Huang Li. What your cousin said is right. It's wrong to ask people for things. No matter how kind you are, you need to open your eyes. Someone like him, who plays the victim to get things, is no better than those beggars kneeling on the ground, who ask for money outright. With a sense of pride, Han Ai cried even harder, his voice nearly hoarse from the effort. Shen Nan disdainfully rolled her eyes at him, then took Huang Li's hand and walked away. Think carefully about what he said. His words may sound pitiful, but which one isn't driven by ulterior motives? It's obvious he has bad intentions. You'd better be cautious. Huang Li wanted to say something, but still agreed to go along with it. He had always had a good relationship with his cousin. If it hadn't been for Han Fei, I might have arranged for the two kids to see each other often. Perhaps then, he wouldn't be so naive. All I hope for in this life is that my innocent, kind daughter can be a little colder for her own sake. Shen Nan came to find me. Little aunt, I've watched all day. That Han Fei is really not a good kid. Don't think I'm young. I can read people very well. You'd better not adopt him. He'll bring endless troubles. I smiled, ruffling his hair gently. I knew he was surprised. Then why are you adopting him? I casually made up a reason. He clearly didn't believe me, but didn't press further. He mumbled, "You're very understanding. Auntie, can I ask you for a favor?" He readily agreed. Previously, my dad abandoned my mom and me, and you helped my mom and me a lot. If you have any requests, just ask. I want to know if I can ask your mom to transfer your school registration to your cousin's school, so you can be classmates. You saw today. She's too innocent. and easily deceived. I want you to look after your sister more often. If someone tries to play act, don't indulge them. Just expose them. If it's time to speak out, don't hold back. He nodded, puffing out his chest. This is no problem at all. Leave it to me. I called my sister. He also agreed. The day before school starts, the formalities have been completed. Shen Nan's house is far away. During the school year, he would temporarily stay at my house after school started. Shen Nan frequently reported back to me about school. Huang Li would study hard every day, occasionally playing rubber band games with classmates after class, while Han Fei was constantly playing the victim, gaining sympathy from his classmates, not forgetting to compare himself to my daughter. It's not like my sister was born with a golden key. Even if his mother adopted me, she didn't buy me new clothes. The meals I had were the simplest. For breakfast, the porridge was made by the maid, who started cooking at midnight. As Shen Nan spoke, she grew more and more animated. I really don't know how he can be so scheming. Most classmates dislike my cousin. If it weren't for you, he'd still be in the orphanage, eating meager meals and getting beaten. Fortunately, I exposed him ruthlessly, calling him a clown for his acting. He even said my cousin had hives, and that her breakfast consisted of medicinal dishes, yet it didn't cure his stupidity. What right does he have to ask for things? After that, he cried for 2 classes straight, and the classmates no longer dared to bully my cousin. Good job, but my concern didn't lie there. What about Huang Li's reaction? He sighed angrily. At first, my cousin felt sorry for him, planning to give him all her pocket money, even starving herself. I had to stop her. I sighed in frustration as well. It seemed I needed to apply some strong medicine to cure my daughter's naivete. Just in time, this weekend was my daughter's birthday. I still remember the special event that happened on that day in my past life. I sent out invitations to all of my daughter's classmates and friends. The weekend banquet hall was decked out in a sea of pink. Balloons and crepe paper piled on the wooden sign in the hall, wishing Huang Li a happy birthday, and may she always wear a smile. The children arrived one by one, the table buried under gifts. My daughter happily thanked her friends, playing with them. As the grand finale, Han Fei arrived fashionably late, wearing an expensive, sequin pink princess dress. He stood in the hall, with a face painted in who knows what. So pale he looked like a ghost. His lips were red as if dripping blood. Sister, I'm sorry I'm late. Mom wouldn't give me money, and I have no gifts to bring you. Only the best wishes. Happy birthday to you. May you always be a princess. The little friends turned to look at him and gasped in envy. Wow, Fei. You look so beautiful today. What kind of dress is that? I've never seen anything like it. You must be the real princess. In my past life, he had said the same things. Wearing the dress my daughter had worked so hard to make, he had stolen the spotlight from her. But back then, I thought he was a blank slate. My daughter said she didn't mind, so I didn't embarrass him in front of so many people, thinking I could correct him slowly. But now he had fallen into my hands again, watching him be adored like a star, while my daughter was being neglected at her own birthday party. I walked straight up to Han Fei, looking him up and down in that dress. This dress was made by Lily herself. Please take it off and return it to her. And also, I never allowed you to use my cosmetics, did I? What you have on your face isn't foundation. It's talcum powder. Today is Lily's birthday, so why did you steal her things and take the attention away from her? Even the first graders know that on someone else's birthday, you should let them be the center of attention. The boy, already infuriated, pointed at him. Even if you wear a princess dress, you'll always be a Cinderella. The other children joined in, laughing at Han Fei. Ha ha ha. Can you believe someone put talcum powder on their face? Coming from the orphanage, he really doesn't know any better. He keeps saying he's poor. We've already given him quite a bit of money. So how can he still steal Huang Li's dress? He's a born thief. Besides, it's her birthday. If he's not stealing the spotlight, then what is? How disgusting. Han Fei bit his lip, his face pale, yet now flushed bright red. He stammered an explanation. I am just like that too. I shot him a glare. What are you talking about? You want to play the pity card, don't you? Being pitiful gives you the right to steal? This is a matter of character. If you dare to steal my daughter's dress today, will you steal your classmates' toys tomorrow? And will you try to take my money the day after? He opened his mouth slightly, desperately wanting to say something, but the kids had already started making faces at him. Several spoiled brats even spat at him. How can someone like you be your friend? You're embarrassing. Trying to be a thief? You need to pay back all the money you scammed from us. Someone like you isn't worth pitying. Being poor is just your lot. You're such a fool. Is it because your biological parents died that you turned into a white-faced ghost? He crouched on the ground, crying so hard he nearly passed out. I pulled him up with force. Go take off that dress. No one will care if you cry yourself to death. A glint of malice flashed in his eyes, and he hurried to the changing room. After a while, he came out in long clothes, a look of aggrieved stubbornness on his face. Sister, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have worn your dress. I just never wore a dress like this before. Please don't take it to heart. My daughter took the dress. Looking at him with pity, just as words were about to escape her lips, I turned the dress inside out, shaking it. The white, powdery substance floated into the air. Seeing Han Fei's guilty eyes, he smiled awkwardly. I don't know either. I gripped his wrist tightly. This is pollen. Huang Li has hives, and her immune system isn't great. There are many allergens. You put this stuff in her clothes with the intention of making her allergic. Under the treatment of medicinal dishes, Huang Li's immune system was getting much better. But in my past life, it was right after this birthday party that she fell ill again. When she was young, she spent at least 10 days each month resting at home. Even as she grew older, she remained weak due to 2 years of allergies. At that time, we couldn't find the cause, and so many years passed. Now that I think back, it must have been Han Fei's doing, especially when I often saw him fiddling with flowers in the backyard and going in and out of my daughter's room. I understood then. My daughter finally awakened to the truth. She looked at Han Fei in shock. Han Fei, I've always treated you like my own sister. How could you do this to me? You're so cruel. Shen Nan couldn't help but scold him as well. You heartless wretch. And he took you in. Out of kindness. You're like a rat in a filthy ditch, unworthy of seeing the light. Under Shen Nan's lead, the classmates stood firmly behind my daughter, several of them pushing Han Fei to the ground. With a classmate like you, it's a disgrace for us. I'm going to tell everyone how filthy you truly are. I'm never playing with you again. Every time I see you, I'll hit you. Get lost, Shen Auntie. Don't take him in as your daughter anymore. Send him back to the orphanage. He deserves to be beaten every day. Han Fei crawled over to me, clinging to my leg and crying. Mom, I was wrong. I won't dare do it again. Please, keep me here. I really don't want to go back to being beaten and starving. I let out a cold laugh. I'll be sending you back right away. I took the swollen-eyed Han Fei back to the orphanage. Tongwen looked surprised and asked me what had happened. I recounted everything he had done recently in detail. Tongwen shot Han Fei a look of disappointment. Finally, she looked at me with a face full of apologies. I don't know how he suddenly became like this, but he definitely didn't mean it. A child you brought back. How could you send him back? Han Effie, I held onto my hand tightly, refusing to let go. Mom, I really won't dare anymore. Please don't send me back. I'll be beaten to death by the other kids. Tongwen glared at him. It's you who said you were being bullied. I felt sorry for you. That's why I found you this opportunity. This is how you repay your adoptive mother and me. Do you know that donations to the orphanage are decreasing? How much do you think it costs to raise one more child? You really don't understand, do you? You should hurry and apologize to your mother to help ease her anger. With a thud, he knelt on the ground, bowing repeatedly. I know I was wrong. I swear I won't do it again. I promise never again. But his eyes still carried a cold, malicious glint. Well, since what happened recently hasn't scared away your wicked ambitions, I don't mind tormenting you for a while longer. Only when you're blooded and battered will I let out a sigh of frustration. He did seem a bit pitiful. So young. It was inevitable he'd stray off course. Han Effie, I looked at me with hopeful eyes, watching the blood drip down to the ground. Mom, give me another chance. Just one more. I helplessly waved my hand at Tongwen. I also want to give him another chance. But what if his old illness relapses? Otherwise, I might as well not process the paperwork to avoid the hassle of returning him. Tongwen could only agree to take Han Fei back. Huangli had already stopped paying him any attention, ignoring all his antics. She coldly told him not to pretend anymore. Plus, I had started giving him pocket money. Though it wasn't much. For a child, it felt like a fortune. Finally, he calmed down for a month. That night, he knelt before me, his face marked with red bruises, crying bitterly. Mom, please, transfer me to another school. My classmates bully me. They beat me every day. And today, they made me kneel on the ground and act as a footstool for them. The money you gave me was all taken by them. They said I stole it. I haven't had lunch in a week. If I don't transfer schools soon, I'm going to die. I smiled faintly. Weren't you the one who wanted to study here? If you hadn't stolen Huang Li's dress, would they have treated you like this? Why do they bully you? You need to consider your own actions. He choked up, his face turning extremely awkward. I certainly wouldn't be transferring him now. For the remaining 3 years, he would have to endure, even if it meant crawling on the ground. After 3 years, under the torment from his classmates, Han Fei had become unrecognizable. He was skin and bones, covered in scars. But I wouldn't allow him to complain to outsiders. I didn't buy him a phone. And he was driven to and from school by a chauffeur. By the time he graduated 6th grade, Huangli had managed to get into a key junior high school through her hard work. While he was mired in his own suffering, how could he find time to study? So he could only attend the bottom tier and poorly reputed 23rd middle school. During the summer break, he came to plead with me, saying he wanted to attend Huangli's junior high school. Just push it back. Why do you have such a big and wide face? People pass the exam themselves. You don't have the brains. I just want to get something for nothing. Love to read or not. If you don't read, get lost. He cried all night. Finally, I went to No. 23 middle school. First week, when he returned home, one corner of his mouth was torn open, and because it hadn't been bandaged in time, the wound was nearly festering. I asked him, "What happened to you?" He cried. The new classmates bully me too. They say I talk too annoyingly, and they tore my mouth. Mom, you have no idea how cruel they are. Of course I know. I thought the reason I insisted on sending him to the 23rd middle school was because of that school. Almost every year, students have ended up in juvenile detention due to bullying. As for the victims, the rate is as high as 50%. There have even been fatalities. With that mouth of his that always plays the victim, what good can he expect to gain? But I didn't intervene. Sigh, the kids from that school are truly unfortunate. Sometimes it's inevitable to stray off the right path. You can bear with it a bit, right? In his slightly desperate demeanor, I returned to my bedroom. In the second semester of his second year, I received a call from his homeroom teacher, saying that one of his arms had been broken, and I needed to rush to the school. When I leisurely arrived at the school, I found Tongwen there as well. Han Fei had already been bandaged up, with red-rimmed eyes, his face bruised and battered. He lay on the cot. The homeroom teacher was continually apologizing to Tongwen. "I'm so sorry. We will definitely manage this more strictly." Tongwen furrowed her brows and looked at me. "Mrs. Shen, when I entrusted my child to you, I never imagined you'd raise him like this." I was completely bewildered. "When did I take your child? I haven't even processed the paperwork with him." Tongwen choked up and then forced a smile. "But didn't I trust you enough to hand my child over to you? Even if you didn't plan to raise him well, you shouldn't have let him end up so battered." I laughed. Did I cause those injuries? Weren't those just kids fighting? How normal is that? Han Fei cried out. "It wasn't a fight. It was over a dozen of them beating me." "Director, my adoptive mother didn't care for me properly." I scoffed. "What does that have to do with me? I am not your adoptive mother. Besides, do you have any evidence that someone else hit you?" Han Fei fell silent. Tongwen's face was a mixture of blue and white, holding back the fire in her eyes. She smiled sweetly at me. "Mrs. Shen, I know this child has made mistakes in the past, but he's still so young. I haven't been able to contact him for so many years, and today I finally heard him say that he hasn't done anything wrong. Being punished for so many years is enough." A glint of cunning flickered in his eyes. "He's been obedient for so long. Maybe we should take the time to process the paperwork. You see how pitiful he is now. I remember you used to be very kind. Is it right to treat a child like this? If you don't take care of him, and he ends up like this, our orphanage can't afford it either." From the moment he led my daughter to attempt suicide, it wouldn't be excessive to apply every punishment in the world to him. But since he's so pitiful, how do I know how he got those injuries? I'll just pity him. First, he is young. Aren't the other kids younger too? He has no evidence. Maybe he has violent tendencies and likes to hurt himself. If I really adopt him, what if he harms me or my daughter? Tongwen listened, and I could hear the shift in my tone. I said awkwardly, "Promise quickly." "No, absolutely not. As long as you are willing to go through the formalities, it will definitely not harm you." Han Fei also swore to the sky. "I will never hurt you, your sister, or your mother. As long as you are willing to adopt me, transfer me to another school. You can do anything you want me to do." I said awkwardly, "You have no evidence to prove you were beaten. The school has strict evaluations for students. Your grades are terrible, and you're already in the second year. Do you really want to transfer in? They might not even agree. Besides, your assurances mean nothing to me." They asked me, "What will you do then?" I smiled. "Simple. All we need to do is get him and me to obtain a certificate for depression and schizophrenia. Under the latest policies, such students should have an easier time enrolling. And if you got sick due to bullying, you can find the perpetrator later and make them pay a heavier price. Go for a psychological evaluation." Director Tong, you know, I've donated quite a bit to your orphanage in the past. I genuinely want to adopt a child. If he hadn't angered me before, I wouldn't treat him this way. Now, I believe he truly regrets his actions. And I also believe in the character of the children in your orphanage. I will continue to make donations." The two exchanged glances, each more excited than the last. "All right, I'll take him right away." To escape from this nightmare, Han Fei worked hard in a private hospital. He passionately recounted how much he had suffered, how he loathed life. Considering he had been bullied for so many years, It was clear he had some psychological issues. Ultimately, the doctor issued a certificate confirming his depression and schizophrenia. He kept his promise and transferred him to the first middle school. I spent a bit of money to ensure he and my daughter could be classmates, because I remembered that the first semester of their third year was about to begin. Mujay should have transferred over by now. Shen Nan was doing well academically, and they had been in the same class as my daughter. He was puzzled by my decision to have Han Fei transfer, but still kept me updated on his every move at school. Many of the students had also advanced from their elementary school, so they knew Han Fei quite well. In the course of rumor spreading, no one looked up to Han Fei. He remained isolated and bullied. The first middle school enforced strict discipline, so no one dared to lay a heavy hand on him. In the first semester of their third year, Mujay indeed transferred in. He spent his days writing love letters to my cousin, but she ignored him. His thick skin was unbearable, and I wasn't worried about Huangli falling for Mujay. After all, in my past life, Mujay had pursued her until after college graduation, before she finally agreed to be with him. Prior to that, she had told me that she didn't have feelings for him, and that being with him was purely out of gratitude, thinking he would treat her well for life. But Han Ai was even worse. Who didn't know that Mujay liked my cousin? Yet he continued to pursue her, whining about how pitiful he was all day long. Mujay was such a simpleton, unable to see through the green tea act. But it wasn't that he couldn't see through the green tea. He simply enjoyed the feeling of being admired by the green tea. One was a schemer, the other half-hearted. Those two were indeed a perfect match. I needed to ensure they would meet their demise. Please don't go harming my daughter any further. Nan is also in junior high now. Your own studies are very important. You can help your aunt by taking care of your cousin. You don't need to worry about anything else. She agreed and left. I sought out Huangli, asking her about Mujay. We had always shared everything with each other. Although she was surprised, she was very honest. Mom, I don't plan to date anyone right now. He does indeed distract me from my studies. And he had the teacher move his seat next to mine, which is a bit annoying. I said, shall I call your teacher and ask him to move Mujay away? She agreed, and then I called the teacher. I also have an adopted daughter in your class. If it's convenient, just move Mujay next to Han Fei. His grades are poor, and since Mujay loves helping others, he'd surely be willing to assist Han Fei. This is a small matter. The teacher agreed without a second thought. Later, Shen Nan told me that under the teacher's supervision, Mujay no longer dared to disturb my daughter. Han Fei, thinking Mujay came from a wealthy family, was eager to befriend him. Mujay, who accepted everyone, quickly became inseparable from Han Fei. During this time, I gave Han Fei quite a bit of pocket money, under the guise of feeling guilty for how obedient he was. Watching him groom himself, buying various brand name clothes and shoes, made me even happier. And soon, just as I expected, his appetite grew larger. I shrugged, apologizing, I'm sorry, but my company is facing a little crisis lately, so money is tight. I have to be frugal. I haven't given Huangli any pocket money for 2 months, just the basic living expenses. Huangli is understanding, and even without money for 2 months, she hasn't once asked me for it. Han Fei lost his excuse to ask me for money. After all, the past is a warning still visible. Later, just as he finally managed to cheer up, his mood sank to the lowest point again. Even without Shen Nan saying anything, I could guess. After a while living like a princess, how could he want to return to being the hungry, cold little beggar? He would surely go to Mujay for money. But Mujay wasn't a fool. He was quite cunning. Otherwise, among so many people, he wouldn't have chosen my daughter. After 10 years of relentless pursuit, if he were truly sincere, how could he, after winning her over, start hanging out with Han Fei again? It was just because he saw my daughter's exceptional qualities. He must have realized he was dealing with someone extraordinary, regardless of his motives. He certainly isn't a good person. Trying to get money from him would undoubtedly come at a price. That day, Han Fei called me, saying something about friends inviting him, that he wouldn't be home tonight. I laughed at him. What friends did he have? It was merely teenage hormones taking over, trying to use money to seduce him. After getting a boyfriend, he'd have money to buy luxury goods again, and his face would once more bloom with a smile. Of course, the times he didn't come home increased, until Shen Nan told me that he overheard Mujie and Han Fei hiding behind the small grove at school. Han Fei was crying, saying he was pregnant. I asked what Mujie had said. Shen Nan sneered. He's no good either. He said he had no money and couldn't afford to get him an abortion. He wasn't lying at all. Since the day Mujie transferred to the first middle school, I had been constantly applying pressure on the Mu group, which had just moved to a city. As the saying goes, a strong dragon cannot overpower a local snake, no matter how powerful they were. In my territory, they could only tread carefully. With prolonged, high-intensity pressure, the chairman of the Mu group was already planning to retreat back to his old territory. Muji's parents wore worried expressions, having lost quite a bit of money, almost back to square one. By now, how could they have the funds to let their son live extravagantly? So Han Fei's pregnancy couldn't be terminated, but as his adoptive mother, having been deceived to this extent, how could I not step in? In the school office, the hurriedly arriving Mu couple looked surprised when they saw me. Mr. Mu, after all, had been in business for many years. His smile came and went in an instant. Oh, I didn't know that Mr. Shen's daughter and my son are classmates. Isn't this just like the flood washing away the Dragon King Temple? Mr. Shen, we're newcomers, and don't know what we've done to offend you. Given the connection between our children, could you please tell us what this is all about? I let out a cold laugh, raising an eyebrow at Mujie. Considering the connection between our children, if it weren't for your son trying to seduce my adopted daughter, would my daughter be pregnant at such a young age? If your son and my adopted daughter weren't classmates, maybe I wouldn't have gone after your Mu family. Mr. Mu was instantly furious. Punch Mujie in the face. You wretched child. How old are you, anyway? And you already do such shameless things? Mujie was left dumbfounded. Han and I looked pale. They wanted to argue, but they knew that once the facts were checked, it would be clear. In the end, Mujie didn't explain at all, only howling and wailing under his father's fists. I won't dare again. He seduced me. He said he wanted me to buy him a bag, and that I could do anything for him. Han Fei's face flushed red. You're talking nonsense. I slapped him hard across the face. At such a young age, how can you be so shameless? What kind of inferior genes did your biological parents have, that you love to seduce men so much? What's the point of studying? If you love selling yourself, then go sell yourself enough. I can't afford to lose my reputation because of you. He covered his face, not daring to speak. Even the teachers couldn't bear to watch anymore. Alright, we're here to resolve the issue. Hitting children won't solve anything. Everyone calm down. I pretended to calm down for a moment, then suddenly stood up. Regardless of whether my daughter seduced him, your son's wrongdoing is undeniable. I won't back off from pressuring you till you leave a city. Mr. Mu, who had initially calmed down, could no longer contain his anger. This seemingly cultured and elegant man suddenly pulled out a belt, almost beating Mujie unconscious. In the end, Mujie collapsed in the corner of the office like a dead dog, convulsing all over. Meanwhile, Han Fei was also covering his face, fear making his legs tremble. Mr. Mu took Mujie to the hospital, arranging for his transfer back to his old home. During the 9-year compulsory education, the school had no authority to expel Han Fei, even if he was embarrassed, with the entire school shouting that he was shameless. The school could only swallow their pride. Fortunately, the high school entrance exam was only a month away. The teacher asked him to move his desk to the corridor so as not to disrupt the other students' studies. He became everyone's target, a tool for releasing the pressure of intense study, especially his gradually growing belly, which had already become the object of everyone's ridicule and insult. He couldn't bear the heavy pressure, kneeling in front of me, begging, "Mom, I'm sorry I embarrassed you. Can you take me to have the baby aborted?" As the months go by, "I will die." This time I became kind. "Of course, after all, you are my adopted daughter." I took her to that private hospital, specifically instructing the doctor, "Make sure to perform the surgery carefully. I heard that using anesthesia is bad for the body." Dr. Jung nodded and decided not to use anesthesia. No anesthesia. He forcibly ripped the 5-month fetus out. Her slaughtered pig-like screams lasted for an hour. Finally, the doctor wiped his hands. Director Shen smiled slightly. "Don't worry, although we didn't use anesthesia. She herself fainted from the pain several times. They were considerate, used cold water to splash her awake. I was very careful. People don't die. It was just an accidental mistake. He won't have any more children in the future." I sighed in regret. "That's great, I've been staying by her bedside." 2 days later, Han Fei finally woke up. When he saw me, he cried loudly, "Mom, what kind of doctor did you find for me?" Regardless of being in so much pain, I'm in pain all over my body. I tilted my head and looked at him. When he used to seduce men to enjoy himself, why didn't he feel the pain? Taking everything away from my daughter, turning his friends against her. When he was seducing her fiancé, did you ever think he would feel pain? He was stunned. "Mom, what are you saying?" I raised the corner of my mouth with a cold smile. Death like murderous intent spread. "I did it on purpose. All the pain you endured was intentional by me. You don't deserve to be my adopted daughter. You, such a malicious girl, don't even deserve to carry my daughter's shoes. She is a princess. You'll be a footstool all your life. Han Fei, spend the rest of your life confessing in a mental hospital." He crazily shouted at me. "Why are you treating me like this? Why are you torturing me? And why did you adopt me back? If it weren't for you, I would have been adopted by someone else. I will become a noble princess. I have ruined everything about me." I shook my head. I turned off the phone's camera. I sent Han Fei to a mental hospital. He already had a criminal record. Moreover, he didn't maintain personal integrity, and he went crazy, cursing his adoptive mother. He rightly should go in to treat his illness. Tonglen also didn't stop him. After all, in his eyes, children, no matter where they are, as long as they don't interfere in front of me, they can steal or misuse social donations as they please. The day I sent him in, 2 adult men, one grabbed him by the neck, one held his legs, dragging him out like slaughtering a pig, continuously biting him, struggling and cursing. The attending physician at the mental hospital, with a serious expression, "Your adopted daughter's situation is very bad. She probably needs several years of proper care." I smiled. "It's okay as long as we can cure his illness. But he still has to take the college entrance exams, which is a lifelong matter. It's best to make sure she recovers within 2 years." What about electroconvulsive therapy? Sedation injections? I have no objections to them. By the way, I'm busy with work normally. I'm also afraid my adopted daughter will be lonely and have no one to take care of her here. So I hired 2 aunts to come here. Can't you let them take care of my adopted daughter normally? The doctor looked at the 2 burly aunts, nodded, touched by the gesture. Adoptive mother who treats her adopted daughter so well. is really rare to see. I nodded. How could I treat him any better? 2 years later, a Yi, shaking his voice, called me. Madam, this brat has gone crazy on his own. Not only did he eat my pants, but he also ate glue. Finally, he jumped off the building by himself. I paused. Did he die? No, it's not your fault. He was already a mental patient. Isn't it normal for him to jump off? Blame it on his weak body. Couldn't bear the misfortune. However, in the year of the college entrance exam, his scores were 80 points higher than in his past life. Originally, he could only attend an ordinary key high school. Now he could choose a good university. The night before sending him to school, he took a pillow and slept next to me. Mom, I don't want to leave you. For the first time going so far away, I was so unaccustomed. I hugged him tightly. Your cousin will also go with you. By the way, do you remember what I told you before, Mom? He looked at me with bright, sparkling eyes, playfully sticking out his tongue. That's too much you've said. I sighed. Mom told you not to let your sympathy overflow. To help someone unworthy. The farmer and the snake. How simple that principle is. He laughed. I know, Mom. From my time, after discovering that Han Fei tampered with my clothes, I won't easily help others again, and I won't foolishly trust. Indeed, Shen Nan also said, he hasn't been stupid in this regard. I want to avenge him, and also teach him a lesson. Some people might really be pitiful, but if it weren't for their own making, they wouldn't abandon their own interests. There's no need to help others. Even if it's to help others, you need to open your eyes. Don't get entangled by deceptive tricks. Don't be betrayed after being helped.